Joining us, the head coach of the Cavaliers, Hank Banner. Coach, it's been a very long journey. You began your time here in the 80s, and it all concludes this weekend after 25 years as a head coach at the UVA-wise baseball program. I guess we'll start there. You've coached in a lot of games. How's it feel going into this last weekend, knowing this will be your last series?
Well, it's bittersweet. It's been a good run, and it will be bittersweet. It's been a long time. I don't know where the time's gone to. That's the biggest thing when you start talking about 80s. Been a long time. Like I said, it'll be bittersweet for sure.
Obviously, you started here as a student athlete, played on a couple of championship teams. You're a local guy from Southwest Virginia. What made you decide to come play baseball at Clinch Valley College?
Well, I played for Coach Spinell in high school, and he came out here and took this job, and then I guess he saw enough in me to offer me a chance to come out here and play, and that was, a dream of mine was to, at least play past high school. I didn't really have vision to playing in the big leagues, but he saw enough in me and gave me an opportunity to come out here and play. And a few other Castlewood guys that came out the year before me, and it just seemed like a good fit when I visited. Opportunity to play, and I really thought at that point, we were going to have a chance to win here, and I wanted to be a part of that. So those are probably the two biggest things. And like I said, came here and never left. So there you go.
Well, you talked about coming out here and having a chance to win. Right around 500 your first year, then team starts getting better. And I want to talk about rivalries a little bit in this, since it's at the end of your career. Maybe we can be a little bit more open with some things, at least publicly. I know we've had a lot of conversation between you and I. From talking to people that played during that time period, Georgetown was a pretty big rival whenever you played.
Oh yes, they had. They'd been to the World Series. They had, they were year in and year out winning the KIAC, and that was the team to beat if you were going to get out of that league. And we had some good games with Georgetown, both here and there, and that was what we were measuring ourselves by, was to catch up with those guys. And we ended up doing that, and won the league in 89, and then ended up going in as the last seed in 90, had to play at their place, and ended up winning the tournament down there. That was probably, from a player standpoint, as special a weekend to go down there and as the last team in, and be able to beat them on their home park, and nobody gave us really a big chance of going in there and winning that thing. But obviously we played better in 89, but 90 was pretty special to go down there and win on their home field and win that tournament.
We'll come back and talk a little bit more about rivalries as we go through this thing. But I guess going chronologically, your career ends. You decide to get into coaching. Your dad was a coach. Did you come to CVC thinking you wanted to be a baseball coach, or what started you down that path?
I came here and I really wanted to be a high school coach. Like I said, Dad, he had coached at Castlewood and drug me along. Some of my earliest memories are going to the park with him, and he had quite an influence on me as far as wanting to be a coach. I was a kid that grew up making out lineups and lefty righties, bringing in a lefty to face a left-handed guy. I knew some of the coaching stuff at a pretty early age, but he had a pretty big influence on me wanting to be a coach. And like I said, I thought that was all. If I could come here and get a degree, play some college ball, and then go back and be a high school coach, that was kind of the path that I really wanted to go down. I came here, I did that. I worked a year at Coburn Middle. I taught fifth grade math and English, and it wasn't what it was quite an eye opener there. And I came back and talked to Coach Spinell a little bit about it, and he said, you know, why don't you take a year and you can be an assistant here and you know, see how that goes. And um, I really liked the college game, and a couple years as an assistant here, I liked it even more, and it got me out of, you know, class changes and ringing bells. And it was a long time before baseball practice when you're teaching fifth grade math and English. So, you know, it ended up being a good move. But I really envisioned being a high school coach from the get go, and just very, very fortunate that this was able to work out here.
You assistant coach with Ray there for a few years. He becomes athletic director. You get the head coaching job. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you had to be one of the youngest head coaches in the league at that time, and not really a full-time staff to help you at that time. Talk about that and maybe some challenges you faced not only with youth, but also, you know, I think you had one part-time assistant there when you first started.
Yeah. I remember having a couple years where I was solo or had just a student assistant. And it wasn't as big a shocker as you might think, because, you know, Ray, he had a part-time, the whole time I played here, he had a part-time pitching coach who did the best he could to be here most of the time. And we didn't have really a full-time assistant. But yeah, that was, you know, taking care of the field and getting, you know, the hotels, that you did it all. But I'd had some of that experience with Ray, and letting me, you know, giving me more responsibility as an assistant to do some of those things. So it wasn't as big a shocker. But when you think about it in today's terms, you know, asking anybody to go out and just be the head coach and with no assistants and doing all that would be, you know, it's not the norm today. But it wasn't, like I said, I'd seen Ray do it until I came along and was an assistant. So it wasn't maybe as big a shock those first couple years, but then we were able to, you know, make that somewhat of a position. And I was very fortunate. You know, Mitch House came back, and he played in the Pirates organization. He came back here to get his degree. So I had him for a 3 or 4 year stint there. And that was huge. In a couple ways, I'd known Mitch a long time, and he had just come out of pro ball, and it was just, he was a big help, especially from the coaching, hitting, and instructional side of things. So that was huge, and that happened early on, which was, you know, that helped a lot.
From the time that you got on the coaching staff until today, and this is something that's kind of neat to me, and I don't know if people even realize it, there's always been an alum of the baseball program seemingly in some way involved with the coaching staff. You know, you've always seemed to have a former player, be it a student assistant, a part-time assistant, a full-time assistant, that has been around the baseball program in some way. Talk about that and the importance you think that is, and it carries on today with Coach Stephen.
True. You know, it kind of happened. I don't know that was something that was going to be an end all be all for who we had helping, but, you know, when a player plays for you for 4 years and then they want to hang around, you get to know that player, you can trust them. You know, if they're hanging around and we can use them, you know, we could use them in a coaching capacity. We did that, obviously. And when we got the position to hire a full-time guy, then, you know, we did interviews, and we had not only one but several former players that would usually apply for those positions. And again, it comes down to trust and knowing what you're going to get. And it's just kind of happened that way. I don't think we set out for it to be that way, but you know, until Coach Costa, and he had no UVA wise ties, but that's just kind of the way it's worked out. And they've all been really, really good assistants. I've been very blessed to have had good assistants all the way through. And you know, you just can't make it without those guys.
All right, another rivalry question. This probably starts your assistant coach early in your coaching career, the Cavalier rivalry between Montreat and UVA Wise.
Oh yeah, that's a bitter one there. It goes
I
way
asked now
back.
because you're about to retire. I think we might be able to discuss this a little bit.
Well, yeah, we've not played them in a long time, and Coach Chaplin he's not there anymore, and again, but yeah, pretty bitter rivalry there with some, with some, I guess, post game handshakes that didn't go well, and again, the game was a little bit different then, and but yeah, it was a team that, from a coaching standpoint, and they had really good teams. They were winning the AAC, and um, they were good. He went in there and turned that program around. And again, it was kind of like the Georgetown situation. If you're going to get through here, you got to beat Montreat. And we were able to beat them, Darrell, sometimes when we really didn't have any business. From a talent standpoint of beating them, and that's what makes a good rivalry. Even if you're not at your best that year, we were not going to go into Montreat or Montreat come here, and you know they may win, but there was going to be skin left in the game. So it was a bitter rivalry, and Coach Chaplin and myself, towards the end of his career, we were able to at least be able to sit around before a game and have a halfway professional conversation. And but he went on to a principal's position at the high school level, and I talked to him 4 or 5 years ago. He's doing fine, but yeah, that's a pretty big rivalry there, and um, one that I'm sure uh, Ray can tell you a few stories on that, as being the athletic director, and having to yoke me out there a few times. And but again, game was a little bit different then too. So
Well, we talked about rivalries, and you had rivalries with these guys, but three guys I think stick out. You were competitors against in your coaching career: Billy Berry, Woody Hunt, Buford Sanders. Talk about those guys and maybe some other guys that you've coached with that have become friends in the game, and not only on the field, but maybe off the field as well.
yeah, that's a great question, and you just those three right off the top of the bat. Billy Berry, they don't come any better. I remember when Billy was a player at Bluefield, and what he's done in the profession is just second to none. I noticed the other day they're number one ranked in NAIA. He won a World Series a couple years ago, and just a self-made kind of guy, blue collar guy. Have nothing but respect for that guy. Coach Sanders called me the other day, last week, and just wishing me well. And um, you know, he's old school, and I've always picked his brain. He was coaching when I played, and he's just to stay in the game as long as he has, and the respect he's got's great. I saw where Coach Hunt was retiring this year too, and wow, the World Series he's been in, and won a couple, and you know, we got when we got in the league and got to play them on a regular basis. I got to talk to him more, and we became better friends, and we'd played him in a couple of regionals, but they're really good, and he just a salt of the earth guy. He's very humble. He's the same guy if you win or if you lose, and you know, just one of those guys that I looked up to. And yeah, and there's a lot. Griff down at Carson Newman, we started about the same time. He caught at Tennessee Wesleyan, and he's really paid his dues to get to where he's at. I think he runs a great program, and we could sit here all day and talk about coaches that I've become friends with. Scott Cornett at Alice Lloyd. He does basketball and baseball over there. I saw where he had just gotten the Hall of Fame there. They don't come in better than Scott and what he's done for Alice Lloyd athletics, not just baseball, but we could sit here all day and talk about influences and that's part of it. And a lot of camaraderie just in a couple years in the SAC, meeting some guys in there that I didn't know. Um, Really good baseball in the SAC as we knew before we went in, but some really good top of the line coaches in there too. Very impressive to sit and talk to a few of those guys.
All right, you look at stuff, everybody remembers their first love, first kiss, first home run. You've been the head coach now 6, 7 years, and you finally get a team that kind of gets over the hump and you make your first regional. Talk about that team. And for you, you win as a player, but to take a team there as a head coach.
Yeah, that's a special group. It's a group that they took some lumps. They came in and we really had to play a lot of those guys as freshmen, and it was the first couple of years. Um, it was tough. It was a learning experience for everybody, but I kept telling that group if we could keep them together, I really felt like that could be a special group, and they were. Again, they were tough, physically tough and mentally tough. They became students of the game. They were smart in how we wanted to approach things, and they really bought in to what we were trying to sell, what we wanted them to be at some point. And that's you say that and it sounds easy, but not every team you have has that buy-in and belief in their coaches and what we were trying to do. And again, we got fortunate on a couple of recruits, and but yeah, very special team. You know, the few years before that, we had the Chad Schaffner, Kevin Dalton, Stephen Dalton, Phipps was on that team. That team they almost got there within a game of getting to a regional. They were probably the first team though that day in and day out, I thought, I can do this. They were another team that really bought in. They did it and cracked through and get to that regional. But like I said, we were one game away. Got beat by Milligan in extra innings. But yeah, those are the teams you remember. And like I said, as being first and first to kind of as a coach, you say, well, maybe what we're doing is going to work, and these kids are buying in. Then you see the wins on the field, and so yeah, they were two. Those are two teams that jump out that were very special, and they all were. Even teams that maybe weren't regional. I remember I tell this story a lot to my assistants. The first team I had here talent wise was not a very good team, and we took some lumps, and I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm thinking I might have the shortest tenure as any head coach in the country because we're not winning. But that team, as far as doing the little things off the field right, going to class, getting it done academically, and then practice, they always had the stuff set up. They were on time, which was looking back was just I was so low at that time, and for them to just keep coming back and having some belief in me, probably now looking back on it, helped me as much as anything. So all of them have a special place, and there's been several of them, and just again very fortunate and blessed to have coached some fine young men here, no doubt.
People who don't work in athletics, I don't think really understand this. People like you and I do. You really spend more time with your colleagues and your coworkers than you do with your own family. And at one time, all of athletics was housed in Greer Gym, which you're still housed in Greer Gym. But at that time, football was here, both basketballs were here. Talk about maybe some relationships you had. I know when I first got here that you and our former men's basketball coach, Lee Clark, side by side. Our softball coach at that time, obviously in the similarities in sport, Tori Raby. Coach Wassam in football was in here. And then even to this day, I think you and the athletic trainers have a pretty special relationship.
Yeah, and it's maybe kind of corny or cliche, but those were the good old days. We were all right here side by side, and you know, I knew Coach Clark. He'd had a bad night on the basketball floor, and they hadn't played well. He was able to vent with me, and Coach Wasson was a guy that I have nothing but respect for that guy as a young coach. He'd stick his head in my office, and some days when I was just beat down, and hey, it's going to get better. You're doing some things right, and we were just a very tight knit group, and I loved coming to work. Um, and because of those relationships, that's what made it special. I know, you know, Tori, a tremendous softball coach, and you know, she would pick my brain on certain things, softball related, and she had, and I would do the same. I thought she had some good practice strategies, some things she was doing, and but yeah, that I don't know. Not a lot of people probably remember those days, Darrell. That was, you know, again, it was a unique time, but it was very special. Just that we were so close in proximity over here, and it's kind of like a team. You either get along. I'm sure we didn't get along every day, but we did, and I've developed just a ton of friendships that I still have today. I still talk to Coach Clark and on a regular basis, and of course, obviously, still see Coach Wassam, and it's those were good days, and like I said, I think we probably all, if you talk to everybody, we probably all helped each other to get through the bad times and then celebrate the good times. They were, I can't remember many games that you weren't at, even when you were a student, that Bruce wasn't at, that Lee Clark wasn't. I remember the first regional we played in Spalding, Kentucky, at Louisville, Kentucky, and just about every coach we had was there. Which you hope you can keep that kind of support going. But I think that says a lot about what we were as a department at that time, and it's like anything else. I think that starts at the top with Ray, and it just trickles down. So, but very special times right there for sure.
You talk about the good old days, and for baseball, my reference point is what I'm getting ready to speak about, because I wasn't here in the 80s. You go to back-to-back regionals, and to get there the first year, in my opinion, it's the wildest game in the history of CVC UVA-wise athletics, the infamous UVA-wise King game that ends in the wee hours of the morning, and I'll just let you take it away.
Yeah, that's another rivalry there. I'll give you a little backstory on that. When I was a player here in been 88, we played King here, and we'd never beaten King, and we swept them in a doubleheader here, and they had a lot of fans, a lot of local kids, and it was just for the school. It was a big deal. As a player, it wasn't quite as big a deal because it's the first year I'd ever played them. They were just another team as far as I was concerned that we were playing. But for our seniors on that team, they were just elated, and King was good. Good program. They've had some outstanding coaches over there, but that became, I think, a bit of a rivalry, and then being in the same league, and then the game that you're referring to, a regional bid game we played earlier in the day.
At a different field.
Well, at a different field, yeah. We actually played at King, and then when we won, we had to pack up and drive to Hunter Wright and Kingsport and play the nightcap, and had a bit of a rain delay to start the game, and then got into the game, and it was a well played game. I thought both teams, again, a regional big game, there's a lot on the line, and it went pretty smooth there till about the bottom of the ninth, and then the call that to put the guys back out there and tie the game, and what ensued after that, not some of my finest moments by any means, but again, it is what it is. But we did get them back out there, and then you've seen a lot of games. I don't think there's any bigger three pitches that's ever been thrown. When we restarted the game 30 minutes later, and Josh Virch goes to the mound, no warm-up pitches, and he goes 3-0 on the batter, the bases loaded, and but to come back and get that hitter, that exemplifies toughness, and then we drop a ball in extra innings that lets them tie it back up, and we're able to come back from that. And that team was, they were tough. They were fundamentally sound. They overcame a lot. But that game, and like I said, we end up wee hours of the morning, we finally win it, and then we play back at 10, and the tournament committee won't budge on us having to play back down there at 10 the next morning. But yeah, that was a game that I'll always remember. I'll always wonder, like I think we've had this conversation a lot, what Will Little thought he saw there in that last inning. I don't know. I really think he thought he saw something that obviously nobody else in the park saw, and but still a good game to talk about. But I'm a kind of guy too. I've often wondered, had that not broke our way, how that would have been for the next year's team moving forward, because that'd have been a bitter one to have lost for sure. But our guys, like I said, we ended up throwing a position player, and he got the last 3 outs in that game. If you remember, he moved from first to the mound, John Bigley. And but again, we had a big crowd there, and it was
well, arguably the best hitter in school history started on the mound, correct?
He did. He threw a heck of a game. Brad threw a heck of a game. He was spot on. He worked out of a jam, I think, in the 7th that started maybe with the catcher's interference call. But as good a game as he threw a lot of good games. That was as good a game as I saw him probably throw, with command of all of his pitches. And like I said, we got a little shaky defensively there in the 9th, and I think some of that was the pressure of it being a regional game. And we got, gotten a little bit of trouble there in the 9th, but Verts came in, was able to make the pitches, and then the ground ball out to end it, and then have to go back out there and restart and all that stuff. And I let the players make that call. I was ready to come on to the house. I would not have had they decided that's the way they wanted to go. That's what we had done. And we talked about it out there. I said, it's your all's team, and if you want to go back out there, I'll support that. And obviously, they went back out there without me, but I was ejected shortly after that. But
you did find a way to watch the game, though.
Do what?
You did find a way to watch the game, though. I mean,
I did.
We can talk about these things now. I don't think we could have, maybe.
No, I was able to watch it. And I think you were up there, and we were able to, able to make a pitch and change or two there late in extra innings, just by body language or some other ways. But and Josh Scarborough, he was a first year assistant on that club. A lot of people
another former player,
and what he did in extra innings, being solo and put in that situation. I know he ran a squeeze play there and put a couple runs on the board that was huge, and then they just kept pecking away, and then I thought he managed the game very well from that point on. And it's a game that I know when he and I get together, he still talks about. And, that one will probably be talked about for a while, even amongst the King people who were there. And they'll be the first to tell you they remember that game too. But yeah, pretty wild night in Kingsport there.
All right, you may disagree with this. If you do, that's fine. We go to the next year, bulk of that team's back. I think it's the best team we've had.
Absolutely. There's no arguing it.
You get in the winner's bracket championship game of a regional with really a loaded pitching staff and a loaded lineup. You had a lot of guys that can mash.
Yeah, that team, the numbers bear it out, the record bears it out. That's the best team from a talent standpoint for sure that we've had here. And like I said, the bulk of those guys came back from that team that we were just talking about. And that was a really good, I thought the league was good that year. You had Union, you had Wesleyan, you had us. I think, that was the top 3 teams in it. But Union was really good, and Wesleyan was really, really good. But yeah, we get into that regional, and we're able to win game 1. I think maybe Spalding we beat, and then we turned around and we beat King in the opening round, and then turned around and beat a really good Union team, kind of come from behind there, and we're sitting there in the championship bracket of the regional. And you were there. I chose to. David Jones was probably our best arm. We had some good arms. Brock Funk, he won game 1. But I closed David Jones the first 2 games, and then tried to start him back in the championship game against Wesleyan, and that didn't pan out. It was a tough ask to ask him to do that. He will still to this day tell you that had nothing to do with it. He just didn't have very good stuff that day. But, to ask a kid to close on back-to-back days and then start him, that's just kind of player David Jones. He didn't make any excuses. He went out there and went at him and they were a good club. They could hit. And another side note to that game, Brad Robbins hit a 3-run homer in the top of the first. We were up 3-0 in that game to start it. And but you're right, that team could hit. They could score runs. Pitching was well above average. If I want to nitpick them defensively, we could have probably been a little bit better. We overcame that with good pitching, and like I said, they could score runs off anybody. And but yeah, that's arguably, or not arguably, in my opinion, that's the best club that I've had the fortune to coach. And like I said, they did a lot of things right on the field, and they all graduated and all very successful people right now today. So that's the main thing too.
We leave the AAC a few years after that, joined the Mid-South for everything. We'd already been there in football. We joined it in all sports. First couple years don't go so well. Start building up, and here's another rivalry for you that leads to a conference championship, Rio Grande.
Yeah, we got in the Mid-South and another conference that was, had some really good teams in it, and we added some teams. We split into divisions that year. We could throw it. Maybe arguably you probably argued a little bit, but I think the best pitching staff that I've ever had was that group, that particular team. Arguably one of the most frustrating offensive groups I've ever tried to coach. We struggle to score runs. We struck out too much. We didn't do a lot of things well from an offensive standpoint. So we won a lot of games 2-1. We lost a lot of games 2-0, which was very frustrating. But we just kept hanging around, and we kept hanging around, and we kept winning enough games to stay within reach of that one spot. And then it all came down to a set here at home for the South Division Championship, and we were able to win, I think, 3 of the 4 games, and then the other side note to that was because of rain, Campbellsville had to play somebody, maybe Shawnee State, and those games mattered, and so we're sitting here on Monday, and Campbellsville wins, and we're the champions of the division, and which was quite an accomplishment in that league, and again, that led into a pretty good rivalry with Rio, and again, he was an old school guy, and he kind of thought outside the box, and but that was a good pitching team. Like I said, we had arms, and we were deep, and we had maybe the best bullpen that I've ever had too. Crosby that year, he he threw the complete season. The only extra base hit he gave up was in the conference tournament. He gave up a double to Georgetown in a game he won 1-0.
Broke a no-hitter, didn't it?
It broke up a no-hitter. It sure did. But that was a good team. We just did it a little bit differently. That team, we had improved defensively, I thought, that year. But offensively, we weren't very good. But that just shows there's different ways that you can win and be competitive in this game. And especially if you can control 60 feet 6 inches. And we really that year did that. And like I said, we just hung around and we won the games we needed to. And it just came down to that last weekend. And, you know, I think I told them we played Saturday, Sunday, and Friday, you know, hey, we've got a shot to win this on our home park. You know, beating them 3 out of 4 might be a long shot, but hey, why not do it? So, you know, we were able to do that. And Josh Joseph pitched the 4th game of that, and he was masterful in that performance, and we were able to win that game. And so that was a good team too.
Then we go Division II. You go through the years where you're not eligible for postseason play. You're finally eligible for postseason play. You're right on the cusp of making postseason. You get walked off at Concord, and you come back the next year with that group of guys, and you make postseason play for the first time as a D2 school.
Yeah, that's the D2 move. It set us back a little bit in the fact that we let some kids go because we weren't going to be postseason eligible. So it was a basic start over. I think even now we're feeling a little of that. But yeah, we that group that chose to stay, had the year there where we go to Concord, and that was a heck of a series. And then to lose it in extra innings the way we did, it was heartbreaking. It was one of the tougher losses just because of what those kids had put into it. They'd really worked hard, as all teams do, but they really came with that goal in mind. And like I said, we played well enough to probably get in that tournament, but we didn't. And then, the message after that game is, how are we going to respond to that? We got a couple of ways to go. Most of that team was coming back. And the next year, we did. We didn't get off to a great start that year by any stretch of the imagination. But by conference play, we played really well. We played well right up to the last weekend, and then we did not play well. Probably played the worst weekend set that we played all season, which, kicked it into, I think, Charleston, West Virginia State. We needed some help, and you never want to leave yourself in that position, but we were able to get a little bit of help and made the tournament, and then really played well in that tournament, I thought, especially after coming off the way we played the weekend prior to. But that was a goal that group of kids had set, and it was probably a realistic goal. I don't know that we were good enough to go in there and win the conference, but going in there and making the tournament and playing there's nothing like postseason baseball. There's just not. For coaches, for players, for SIDs, for trainers, there's nothing like it. And you want every kid to experience that. And like I said, I was glad that group got to go to Beckley and experience postseason play. And like I said, I thought they had a really good. We had Shepherd on the ropes in the opening game, and it was just wasn't meant to be. But we had a real good tournament there, I thought.
The last 2 years, it has to be unlike anything you've ever seen. You switch leagues, and you're dealing with a global pandemic. I'll let you touch on that briefly, and we'll wrap up the kind of our baseball talk here. But last 2 years, I mean, who's seen anything like this?
No, it's unlike anything that I've had to deal with, and I've dealt with a lot as far as different things getting thrown at you. But there was no playbook for this. There was no coaches you could call and say how did you. I know this happened to you. How did you handle it? You know, it was tough on just all angles. Last year we came out, we had a very veteran group for our standards. We had 14 seniors, and I really felt like just our experience would keep us in some games, and we really got off to a good start. Beating Tusculum 2 out of 3 over there, and then played Newberry. Arguably one of the teams in the top. We played them a really good home set here. Beat King, and then the season just ended so abruptly. And that was a talk that I would, that night in the clubhouse, I wouldn't want to have many more of those with a team. It was just devastating. You had seniors that didn't know whether they could come back or would come back or if would be allowed to come back, and then you go through the transition over the summer, and most of those guys didn't come back. We don't have a grad program. A lot of them are going on to grad school. So it came down to, I want to go back and play one more year or go ahead and get started. And I will to every one of them. We had individual talks, and I thought they made very adult decisions in what they decided. Tyler, he had some classes to take, and he could get a minor, so it made sense for him to come back. Gabe he was a transfer, so he had a few classes to get his degree, so it made perfect sense for those guys to come back. But it left the cupboard pretty bare. And then the biggest thing and the thing that I didn't figure out, and that's on me, is just recruiting in the pandemic. Recruiting from that when it ended until we started back, it was difficult for us. We struggled. You can't have kids on campus. We're trying to do a lot of stuff virtually, which is not down my alley by any stretch of the imagination. But we did the best we could. But we got thin on the heel. We were thin going in. We had a couple injuries, and we just got decimated. From the pitching side of things, and that's on me to make sure that doesn't happen. And but it did, and we're not going to make excuses. We've been able to at least keep them healthy enough, and keep enough bodies to get through the season, because we were really looking there at the halfway mark. We were going to have enough bodies to get through the season. And kudos to Dana. She's done a great job of keeping those guys healthy. And we had a couple position guys who had pitched in the past, and they saddled up and they've pitched some innings for us. And but that's kind of what we got, kind of where we got. So yeah, the pandemic, again, is just unlike anything that I've ever seen. And then I guess the magnitude of it, I think, I know I talked to my staff, but made mention to you when MLB was having trouble managing it, I knew we were in trouble. When that institution can't figure it out, and it was new to them too, it was new to everybody. So yeah, that's going to go down as one of the things that, getting through that, was a, and I think we are getting to the tail end of it, and things are going to get better. And but yeah, that was probably the most unique, helpless feeling as far as a head coach I've ever had.
I'm going to let you score some points at home here.
All right. That's always positive.
All right. The time commitment that your family has to have for someone to work in athletics, especially head coach all these years, your wife, your daughter, Bridget Brooke, talk about the sacrifices and commitment that they've made for you to be a part of this program now for as long as you've been a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's just I can't say enough about Bridget and like I said, Brooke supporting me. The time away from home, the things I missed. Brooke, she's a senior now, graduating. She's leaning towards coming to UVA, so I'll prompt that for her a little bit. But yeah, it's not easy being a coach's wife. It's sure not. And I remember having discussions with Ray, and it's just not. And I was very honest with Bridget and what it would entail. But until you live it, it's tough. And they're right there, believe it or not. They go through the bad times and the losses with you, and and sometimes unfairly they do. But Bridget, she was a collegiate athlete, a basketball player, so she gets some of that. But yeah, the time commitment and the time away from home, and just the number of road trips, Daryl. I guess that's what kind of got to wearing on me. And as we switched leagues, they became longer. It was leaving on Thursday, not getting back to the wee hours of Sunday morning. I know you go through the same thing. You've got a family and kids, and it's tough. And if they're not committed with you, it can be just an impossible situation. But they've supported me. I remember going back to the King game. That was in probably May, and Brooke had been born in August, and my wife was there with her as a wee baby. And of course, it got late, and they had to go home. And plus, she always says she didn't want Brooke to see her daddy go to jail that night. So they left. But she's been a big fan. She's my wife's she's a player's wife. She's always sticking up for those guys, and they come to a lot of games and support us, and my dad was too. It's my first year, Daryl, of him not being able to come and watch us play. He passed away there in January, and but he was helpful. He was a guy that I could ask and bounce things off of, and not having that's been different. But I can't say enough about my family and what they've done to allow me to do this for as long as I have, and then to do it at one place. And again, Ray having the confidence in turning it over to a 26-year-old wet behind the neck guy, and to be able to stay here for the length of time that I have. Lot of people have contributed to that, and I'm very, very thankful to those people, and never be able to thank them enough. So,
Coach, we'll close it with that. And I'll say a thank you to you. We mentioned them a little bit earlier. Tori Raby, Lee Clark, yourself. For some crazy reason, the three of you convinced Gary Juhan and Danny Sterling to hire me when I was 22 years old, and quite frankly, had no business having this job. And I owe you and Tori and Lee a lot of gratitude. So thank you. And let's try to finish this career up with a couple wins this weekend.
Daryl, I appreciate everything you've done. You've always bled red and black, and I'll never regret going in there and having that conversation. You just don't find many people that show the dedication that you have, and I wish you nothing but the best. And thank you for all you've done for me here over my career.
Sounds good, Coach. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you, Daryl.